Welcome, dear learners. I am Professor Khare, currently heading the Department of Educational Finance and also associated with the Center for Policy Research in Higher Education at the National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, popularly known as NEPA in New Delhi. It is my great pleasure to be talking to you today on a very, very important aspect that has been included and emphasized in the National Education Policy 2020, that is skills training, vocational education, and graduate employability in India. Now, what I thought was before we start talking specifically about the National Education Policy 2020, let us very quickly look at the context of the very reason as to why skills and employability emerged as a major challenge in the country and across the globe. Now, needless to say that as the very concept of development shifted from economic development to social development and later to human development, investments in education became paramount for two reasons. One, the quality of life, the higher earnings, and also the quality of jobs that it was rendering to the educated youth. That is how the new wave of linking education to skills and vocationalization, work-based skills and vocationalization gained importance in the 20th century onwards and became more strong in the 21st century. Now, as the literature is coming forth, evidencing the closeness between higher and higher levels of learning with better development, not just for the self, but also for the whole community and for the whole globe, as has been embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, the importance of higher education integrating with skills and vocationalization is growing day by day. So it is in this context, let us very quickly see what are the challenges that the educated youth in India have been facing as far as their employability or job readiness is concerned. Now, if we go by these statistics, the very first thing that comes to fore is the demographic dividend that India is quoted to have. Now, this demographic dividend can be exploited only with better educated and better skilled youth. However, the industry is aghast with the kind of graduates that we are producing today. Also, the statistics prove that more than 50% of the Indian youth are either not befitting the skills that are in demand by the industry sector, or the quality of skills that they have with them are not up to the standards as demanded by the industry. There are three kinds of gaps that emerged in one of the studies that we conducted in CPRHE at NEPA. And these three gaps were related to awareness gaps, the perception gap, and the third one was the skills gap. Now, as far as the awareness gap is concerned, this gap relates to the knowledge regarding the job market, the knowledge regarding what kind of jobs are going to be available in future, what kind of opportunities are waiting for the educated youth, what kind of skills are going to be in demand. So that kind of awareness is missing or is less as compared to what the industry sector is projecting at. After the awareness gap comes the perception gap. Now, the perception regarding the importance of a particular skill, be it the work-based skill or be it the generic skills, is also missing between the student, that is the learners, the teachers, that is the human force which is behind providing any kind of skills training to our youth, and the employers who are demanding the skills from these learners. So those kind of perception gaps also exist. And lastly, of course, the skills gap. Now, skills gap also, if we see, can be divided into three components: the knowledge and technical skills. So the employers are reasonably okay with the kind of knowledge and technical skills that our graduates come with. Let us now come to the National Education Policy 2020 and what kind of a perspective it holds with regards to skill, and what kind of strategies does it propose. Now, I would like to call the National Education 2020 as to be unique and forward looking as well as comprehensive. Why unique? Not because it has come after a long wait of 35 years, but unique because for the first time, the policy is trying to bring integrated elements of knowledge, skill building, and vocationalization at all levels together. Why I also feel like calling it forward looking is because it is more futuristic in the sense it is aligning itself to the four goals that are enshrined in the Sustainable Development Goals of 2020, that is quality and equitable learning for all and lifelong opportunities of learning to be provided to all people. It is the four pillars that basically form the foundation of the national education policy, which can be described by four E's of equity, enrollment, employability, and excellence. Now, all these four E's, in some way or the other, reflect the United Nations goals of bringing better quality, sustainable development and lives for all individuals. Very quickly, let us look at the few major principles on which the education policy is based, or it is enshrined in the national education policy. The very first one being the recognizing, identifying, and fostering the unique capabilities and capacities of each individual student. Now, it is for the first time the policy is saying that every individual has specific talents and it is important to recognize, identify, and nurture them. The second aspect, which is very new in the policy, is the multidisciplinarity and skill-based education, which has to be brought in together at all levels. The third aspect, which is striking, is the extensive use of technology and training in digital skills also to be an integral part of learning. And the fourth is respect for diversity and local context. So for the first time, we are not just looking at global skills, but we are also giving equal importance to our local art, heritage, and culture. And this also to be a part of learning at all levels of education. Let us take a very quick look on some of the important elements that will help us to generate the kind of skills that the 21st century is actually demanding from the youth population today. Let me also share with you a simple concept of employment and employability. Often, employment and employability are used interchangeably. But are these two the same? Is a question that one must ask oneself. Now, if I have to answer in just one sentence, employment and employability are certainly not the same. Now, employability is basically an individual's preparedness for the world of work in totality. So, it comprises of a set of achievements in skills, in understandings, in personal attributes that can make graduates to gain employment, to remain in employment, to progress in employment, but also contribute in a meaningful fashion to the community and to the global development as well, aiming at sustainable development that flows down the generations. So, this is how the concept of employability has to be understood, and this is how the concept of skills delivery has been encompassed in the National Education Policy 2020. The second aspect of skilling that one has to understand is the pace at which the new skills are coming into feature or are coming into focus with the fourth industrial revolution and now the fifth industrial revolution knocking the doors, which is based on IT-based high technologies, AI, that is artificial intelligence, big data management, etc., etc. So how this pace of change, the kind of dynamism that the industry sector is experiencing by way of putting up the demand for new skills every day. So on this point also, the National Education Policy has tried to provide some kind of a guidance and direction as to how we can tackle this very aspect of being responsive to the needs of the new industry. Let me now come to specific areas in terms of skill development, vocational education. They are also able to imbibe many of the generic skills which we just talked about are missing in our youth. So at the lower levels of education, we are trying to integrate with some foundational skills, some generic skills. At secondary and senior levels of education, we are trying to move towards more functional skills. However, it is for the first time that even at the higher education level, in a concrete fashion, the skills-based education is being integrated at all the levels, be it undergraduate teaching, be it postgraduate teaching, or be it even PhDs, doctoral level teaching. Now, at all levels, we are trying to not just integrate skill building with each of these subjects, but a separate degree and diploma level programs in vocationalization are also proposed to be started. So this is how we are trying to build a continuum of skill delivery across all levels of education. Also, what is very interesting to learn here is we are also trying to break the silos. We found that training was not part of higher education system at all. In fact, there were institutions like ITIs or polytechnics or even technical education, engineering and professional education, which had a component of skill training, apprenticeship learning. All of these had a major content of skill building and training, but the general academic education at the higher education level was considered or was expected to be knowledge producing and imparting knowledge to the young learners by way of providing both horizontal and vertical mobility to the graduates. Now, when I say horizontal mobility, we are providing for students to move from general academic streams to vocational streams. There are greater choices and freedom and flexibility given to them to make a choice of the subjects that they would want to study, which may be a combination of science, of arts, of music, designs of postgraduate education or higher education. That is, we begin with, let us say, a 3-year undergrad program or a 4-year undergrad program with a 1-year postgraduate program. So all kinds of combinations and choices are being given to the students with greater flexibility to move between academic education, work-based education, skill-based education, and vocational education, thereby breaking the silos between the two. The third aspect that I would like to bring to fore is multilingualism and multidisciplinarity. For the first time, there has been a specific emphasis on bringing out literature, reading material, and teaching in regional languages, also promoting English language and foreign language learning in the universities and also at senior levels of schooling. Multidisciplinary learning, interdisciplinary curriculum development, and multidisciplinary large-scale universities to be opened, which provide a more holistic kind of a learning, more diverse kind of an exposure to our learners is also in the fray. Then comes the third aspect, that is experiential learning. Now, how experiential learning can be promoted is the National Education Policy proposes three areas. One, of course, is the work-based learning skills. The second is art-based skills. And the third is sports skills. So, all three kinds of experiences to be combined, curricular and extracurricular experiences to be combined to give a holistic personality development opportunities to our learners. The fourth aspect is, in a big way, a boost to higher education vocationalization has been given. Not just by integrating skill based learning at every level of higher education and all the courses that are being taught in the universities and colleges, but very specifically aligning higher education to vocational education by developing or aligning it to the national skills qualifications framework. Now, this skills qualification framework, which has been developed for a vocation-based education for at 10 levels of education, which begins from the secondary, high secondary levels and goes up to the PhD levels. At 10 levels, descriptors have been given which are sector specific, which are industry specific, professional skills, core skills, technical skills which are required at various levels of workmanship in that particular sector or industry has been provided and developed, and the not just the curriculum has to be linked to these descriptors, but also the evaluation has to be linked to these descriptors. So in a way, standardize the skills training aspect. So the national occupational standards which come into picture over here, how the sector specific skills council under the overarching umbrella of the National Skill Development Commission has come out with national occupational standards to be linked with the national skills qualifications framework, and how they are going to be the guideposts of skills training and vocational education at 10 levels is something very interesting in this new education policy. Also, for the first time, the policy talks about recognizing prior learning. So, there are people who have learned through informal means. There are students who come from various backgrounds and learn from in a traditional methods, informal methods by their forefathers, by their parents, or maybe other informal means. For the first time, the skill universities per se have been opened. The purpose of these skill universities is to give degree and diploma based education right till the doctoral level only in very specific vocational subjects. Next aspect is how we can strengthen the student support system in the universities and colleges. The next aspect that the new education policy is trying to build is the new age skills and how to integrate digital learning and IT based skills at every level. So, for example, the Ministry of Electronics and Communication has started centers of excellence in various universities to impart high-end skills in IT and electronics to the students. The next aspect is building in the entrepreneurial culture. So, startup hubs, centers of innovation, how can these startups be funded? All these are part of the national education policy. And lastly, as to how international organizations can also be brought in to impart various kinds of skills to our students is also in the fray. The two major ministries which are working hand in hand to achieve this is the Ministry of Education, certainly in the lead, but working very closely with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Uh, the two together in the recent budget are proposed to launch about 5,000 skill centers in the very next year. Uh, Also is the e-portal, the virtual lab, 750 virtual labs that are proposed to be created in science and mathematics, 75 skilling e-labs which are proposed to be created. All of these give greater credential to whatever has been proposed or suggested in the National Education Policy 2020. However, if we look at all the various things which have been suggested to be implemented, it is too much on the platter. Three important areas or three important concerns that one has to keep in mind if we at all want to implement all of these proposed strategies in their true spirit. One is a proper mission mode, a proper vision, and a proper mission to be able to embrace all of these proposals or all of these suggestions which have been made in the national education policy. The second is the acceptability to this change, acceptability to this change of integrating training and skills to collegiate and university teaching. And third, very important is to see how this entire training, skills training and vocational education integration doesn't impact the equity and inclusion in an adverse fashion. Because if we look at the current scenario, the kind of disparities and distortions that exist today in our higher education system can be categorized into four kinds. So we see disciplinary disparities. There are certain disciplines like engineering or professional education, which is very much in demand by the industry sector as far as employment and jobs is concerned. And it is also projected that more than 60% of the new jobs are going to come in the services sector in the coming years. The second disparity that we see is in terms of regional disparities. So we see that there are disparities that exist in terms of institutions which are placed in remote areas, rural areas. The quality quality distortion is one again very a big problem that we are facing. And the third is the social and gender disparity. So how to bring students from the marginalized section and also women into the fore of skill-based vocational learning and training at the higher education level. On that note, I thank you all very much for your patient hearing, and I hope that this kind of a 360-degree change that the national education policy is proposing by way of integrating skills training to education, not just at the curricular level or at the pedagogical level, but also at the evaluation and outcomes level, is something which is going to challenge us in the coming future. Thank you very much.